Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ameruddin bin Muhammad Roslin, and me myself with my partner Muhammad Izzat Fahmi will present to all of you our topic, which is the ethical principles from the Quran. Let's begin. As we know, Islamic ethical principles provides a comprehensive Islamic framework of concepts and perspectives regarding the oneness of God, which is Tawheed, and his relationship with the world, man as the vicegerent on earth, which is Khalifa, and human free will and responsibility, divine destiny, and the ultimate God in the hereafter. The ethical worldview of the Quran is an Islamic worldview, but with emphasis of the ethical dimensions. As we know, the Quran is a book of guidance, which is Huda for humanity, and the criterion, which is Furqan, to distinguish between good and bad actions. It is only with proper guidance that one is able to surrender to the will of God and not the whims of man. From the Islamic perspective, Quran emphasizes ethics are concerned with a rational examination of principles and rules that guide appropriate moral conduct. The Arabic word of morality is akhlaq, which is good character, which is etymologically related to al-khaliq, which is the creator, and makhluq, the created, which assumes a good relationship between human beings and God, and good relationship between human beings. From Quran, Islamic ethics is not exclusively philosophical, but is multidisciplinary as it connects with other disciplines, including jurisprudence, theology, and Sufism. Quran is a book of guidance that appeals to both the mind and heart and lays down a unified ethical system anchored in eternally valid and life-enriching moral principles. A feature of the Quran is the blending of law and morality. Thus, moral action is not only a personal matter, but also a social concern and always connected to belief in God from the Quran perspective. I will give you an example, the ayah from the Quran, which represents the ethical principles from the Quran perspective. From Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 177, Allah said, "Piety is not to turn your faces towards the east and the west. Piety is he who believes in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book, and the prophets, who gives of his money in spite of loving it to the near of kin, the orphans, the needy, the wayfarers, and the beggars, and for the freeing of slaves. And truly pious are those who keep their word whenever they promise, and are patient in misfortune and hardship, and in times of peril. It's they that have proved themselves true, and it is they who are conscious of God." So, from this ayah is given the prominence of right action. Muslim scholars have emphasized this theme and developed an extensive body of laws based on moral action and categories of actions that are obligatory, recommended, or simply permissible. Quran emphasized that values such as justice and benevolence are key virtues that shape the content of the moral world of Islam, and they are also broad and flexible enough to apply to the concrete situations of today. The acts of worship, which is ibadah, are compulsory for every Muslim, but the moral virtues, which are supererogatory, nawafil, and based on one's own volition, are additional to worships and define who is truly fit to become a vicegerent of God or Khalifah or a friend of Allah, which is Wali Allah. All these virtues are the keys to happiness in this world and the next, and must be conceived within the ethical worldview of the Quran, where God is the center of all things. Man has been granted a trust, which is amana, which is his free will. So, the main principles that make up the moral worldview of the Quran, which is the responsibility and accountability, justice and benevolence, sin and repentance, and intention, also sincerity. Imam al-Isfahani, the 11th century Islamic moral philosopher and precursor to Imam al-Ghazali, sets out the purpose of man as involving three duties, which is the duty of Khalifah, the duty of Imara, or the cultivation of the earth, and the duty of Ibadah, which is worship. So this is all included from what we call as the ethical principles from the Quran. So next, I will pass the presentations to Izzat Fahmi, which he will explain more and get in depth in the topic of ethical principles from the Quran.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Izzat Fahmi bin Osman, and for today I will be continuing on this presentation based on the topic of ethical principle based on the Quranic perspective or based on the Quranic view. So before that, thank you Brother Amir for your explanation on the introduction of this topic. And for me, I will be discussing to all of you guys on the main principle that make up the moral worldview, ethical worldview from the Quranic perspective or Quranic view. So the first perspective, which is responsibility and accountability. So what is responsibility and accountability? It is something that we receive. For example, that we receive our life. Allah have given us to all of us a life. So our responsibility to pay the debt to Allah. So we need to worship Allah. We need to perform 5 times of prayers to Allah to pay the debt to Allah, something like that. And another example of responsibility is something like we receive a job, we get a job, and maybe we have a good position in a company or maybe in a club. So that is our responsibility, and we need to take the responsibility seriously, as the responsibility is something like we need to responsible for it, as it is a very serious thing that a person should do, because they have the responsibility, something like that. Okay, so the next point will be justice and benevolence. Okay, justice. As a Muslim, we need to treat every person in this world, doesn't matter they have black skin, they are white skin, maybe they have green skin. We need to treat every person in this world fairly. Doesn't care with the different races, different live in country, maybe they are Malaysia, they are Indonesia, Malay, Chinese or Indian. We need to treat every person fairly, okay, because that is what Islam teach us to be. Islam doesn't teach us he is a superior person, I am the lower person, maybe something like that. Every person in this world are same in Islam. Okay, so we need to treat every person in this world fairly. Okay, and the third point is sin and benevolence. So it is normal that a person in this world make a sin, they make a mistake. So every time sins and repentance. Okay, sins and repentance. So every time we make a sin, we make a mistake, we repentance, we ask Allah for forgiveness. If we make a sin to a person, so we need to meet the person and ask forgiveness from that person lah. Okay, something like that. And so the final principle, the last principle will be intention and sincerity. Intention is something like our niyat. Okay, so every time we do a job, every time we do something, we have our niyat. So we must see our niyat or the intention is for the sake of Allah or for the sake of human or for the sake of praises from human, so that human worship us, something like that. So as a Muslim, we must make sure that our niyat will be only for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of human attention, something like that, because Allah is the one who created us. Allah is the one who judged us. So everything that we do must be, the niyat will be for Allah, for the sake of Allah. So the metaphysical worldview, okay, the metaphysical worldview of the Quran provides the basic vision and mission set out for humankind. Based on Imam al-Isfahani, the 11th century Islamic moral philosopher and precursor to Imam al-Ghazali, sets out the purpose of man as involving three duties, which is the first one is the duty of a Khalifa, which is vicegerency. The second one is the duty of Imara, the cultivation of the earth, and the last one will be duty of Ibadah, which is worship to Allah. And so Imam al-Isfahani states in his view that man was created for three purposes. Okay, the first one, man's first purpose is in the cultivation of the earth, as is amplified in the verse, in the Quranic verse, Surah Al-Hud, verse number 61, which means that a little meaning from the verses. He brought you out from the earth, okay, and made you inhabit it. The second purposes of a man living in this world is to worship Allah. This have been proven in the Quranic verses. In Quran, chapter 51, verse number 56, Surah Al-Zariyat, and the Quranic verses that every person, I think, have heard about, which is A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim, wa ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun, which means that I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. So this means that men should obey God's commandment and prohibition. Something like Allah has told us to salat, so we need to salat. Allah prohibit us from maybe eating pork, for example, so we need to not doing that thing, everything that Allah has prohibited to all of us not to do it, so we need to obey it and not to do everything that Allah not ask us to do. Okay, so for the last purposes for a man living in this world is vicegerency. This is stated in the Quran, chapter number 7, verse number 121, Surah Al-A'raf, which means that he will make you successors in the land, and then observe what you will do. So in other verses, vicegerency is the imitation of God in accordance with one's ability to rule by applying the noble virtue of the law, wisdom, justice, forbearance, beneficence, and graciousness. These virtues draw men to paradise and close to God Most High. So if a person pursue all of these three duties stated above, so a person or a Muslim will be surely attain happiness in this world and the world of hereafter, in the hereafter. Okay, and all of these three duties should be kept in mind when undertaking any moral action, which is not merely being good for the sake of being good, but has a higher purpose in this world, and which ultimately brings men close to God. Okay, and as noted from the quoted passage, for men to attain the high status of visuality in the eyes of Allah, he would first have to perform his duty of worship and submission to God, which is Allah, and this is the very foundation of ethnic in Islam. Without a person worship to Allah, worship or submission to Allah, man's ethical conduct and the internalization of the virtues will not have a higher purposes. And without the virtues, the believer will remain at the level of servitude to God, but could not possibly attain to the high level of vigilancy. Thus, there is a hierarchy with respect to the duties of a man, and the lower duties are prerequisites for the higher function of human life. So that's all from our presentation. Hope you guys understand the knowledge that both of me and Amir want to give to all of you guys. Hope you guys love this video. Thank you for watching, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.